I didn't see him. What are you looking so sad about, Jeff?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. I mean, that's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talking. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talking about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Frazier, one time during my career, I was on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cast Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Box Historian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miss Cass, crush the legend. 21 YGL green light. Salute to everyone and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Box Historian. Today, reliving George Foreman versus Frazier, Norton, Ali, and Moorer. Reliving George Foreman versus Frazier, Norton, Ali, and Moorer. Mike Grimm in the building. Salute, Mike. How's the family today? Still early in this big week of boxing history we are embarking on. Here today, we're going to look at, I would say these are four George's most significant fights. When you think of George Foreman and you say, name a Foreman fight, depending on your age. Young people probably would say Moorer. Somebody my age, 50s, 60s, will probably say Ali. or Frazier Norton. But yeah, I would say these are four of his more significant, four signature fights, yeah. But of course he had some other big fights. The man had 76 fights altogether, like Ron Lau. And in his second career, Holyfield, he gave Holyfield a battle, went the distance. Nobody expected that 40-something-year-old man to give Holyfield that kind of fight. He lost it, but it was a great battle. But yeah, I would say his four signature fights, Norton, Frazier, Ali, and Michael Moorer, when he won the title back. Still the oldest man to this day to ever win the heavyweight title. And we're going to look at these four fights today. Not just the fights, we're going to look at the events surrounding them at the time they happened. A little background, the fight, the aftermath, how each fight affected Big George's life and career. All that today on Cast Sports, the Box Historian, bringing you all that boxing history. But first, we're going to dig into the archives and come up with a classic fight for our fight of the day. And today we're going to dig way back into the archives. So let's get started with the fight of the day. Okay. The fight of the day today is Homicide Hank, Henry Armstrong versus Lou Ambers. August 17th, 1938. Armstrong versus Ambers. Going way back. Yeah, Tommy Morrison too. 21 YGL, that's right. Yeah. George had a lot of big fights. 76 altogether. I think he won 68. He had almost a 90% knockout ratio. Big George. But yeah. Armstrong versus Ambers. August 17th, 1938. There's only one way to become a truly great boxer, and that is to compete against other truly great boxers. Now, back in the day, if a fighter was near the top of the heap, this was a more likely prospect than it is now. That's because, simply put, there were more great fighters around. There was also a constant demand for fistic entertainment, with boxing cards taking place on at least a weekly basis in pretty much every major American city. Unlike today, the top talents fought on a frequent basis, which meant the pretenders were separated from the contenders in short order. And one way or another, only the very best rose to the top. There's a shot of Lou Ambers, one of the competitors in the fight of the day today. Shawa in the building. Salute, Shawa. How are you today? And remember, anybody with a channel, open invitation to always drop your link in there so everybody can subscribe to you. Shawa has a great channel. But salute, Shawa. The fight of the day today is Henry Armstrong versus Lou Ambers. There's a nice shot of Lou right there. Okay, so let's continue. Now, the point being that Lou Ambers, who campaigned during the ultra-competitive 1930s, is one of the all-time great lightweights. This is not up for debate. It's a fact. And the reasons why are easy to set forth. Those being Tony Canzonieri, Frankie Click, Baby Arizmendi, Fritzy Zivic, and Al Bummy Davis. We could add in Sammy Fuller and Johnny Judy too, if we want. But those 5 names are really enough. The other name to add, of course, is Henry Armstrong. Yeah, that was one of the greatest era for the lightweight 135 ever. And we only had 8 weight classes then. No juniors and supers. That's the big 8. I call them the big 8. Remember what they flyweight, featherweight, lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, light heavyweight, heavyweight, bantamweight. I miss bantamweight. But those 8, okay? And remember, Henry Armstrong was champion in 3 of them at one time, and it was only 8, okay? Now, of course, the other name to add to that list is Henry Armstrong. And the key point is this. As great as Ambrose was, Armstrong was greater. And he proved it on a hot August night in Madison Square Garden, in the process becoming the first and only prize fighter in the whole long history of this brutal trade to hold 3 divisional world titles at the same time. Now that's incorrect. There's another one. He's the only man to do it, but there's another one. And Wolf Brown Sugar had 3 titles at one time too. So Henry Armstrong is the only man to hold 3 titles at one time, but it's 2 in history to do it: Henry Armstrong and Ann Wolf. Okay. So yeah, Henry was the only man to hold 3 divisional world titles at the same time. And yet, strangely enough, at the end of 15 rounds of all-out warfare, Armstrong's stupendous and historic achievement was not the story of the night. But more about that in a minute. There they are, 2 competitors in the lead up to the fight. Armstrong on the left, Ambrose on the right, hyping up the big fight. So we are talking about greatness in boxing, and a night when 2 truly great warriors battled for the undisputed lightweight championship of the world in Madison Square Garden. This was 1938. During a global economic catastrophe they called the Great Depression, which meant the fight gyms in every major American city, and there were a lot of fight gyms back then, were full to bursting with desperate young men looking to become champions, or at least find a way to earn a little cash for slinging leather. Now, there were only 8 truly legit weight divisions, and there was only 1 world champion for each. This was truly a different time, when the competition was beyond fierce, and only the very best could crack the top 10, let alone challenge for the top of the mountain. Only the very best back then. And the extraordinary Henry Armstrong was already carrying not 1, but 2 world title belts into the ring with him that night. The previous October, after having completely decimated the featherweight ranks over the course of 6 years, he won the 126-pound championship with a knockout over tough Peter Saran. 14 wins later, he challenged the great Barney Ross for the welterweight title, battering the popular but aging champion over the course of 15 one-sided rounds. There they are again. No, that's Armstrong and Barney Ross right there. No, that's Ambrose and Armstrong again. Probably at the weigh-in. Yeah, there's the weigh-in. There's a scale right there. Okay. Now, the victory over Ross made Armstrong already a major draw, a legit sports star. For back then, unlike today, double champions were a rare and very splendid thing. The equivalent of, say, a tennis player today winning a career Grand Slam, something only 8 men have ever done. Now, with his dominant win over Ross, there could be no question that Homicide Hank was special, a true great of the ring. But since he had skipped over the lightweight division, the question many were asking was, what if he dropped back down to 135 and challenged Lou Ambers? Could he become a Triple Crown king? What if he dropped back down? Could he get his third title? And from the opening bell, this fight was a war. Y'all would say with dress shoes on. Yeah, this fight was a war from the opening bell to the end. Yes, Ross and Tony Canzonieri had already accomplished this feat, but only if one counted the so-called junior weight divisions as being on par with the regular ones. Yeah, they were there, but nobody paid too much attention to juniors and super. They were just starting to come around, right? Nobody paid too much attention to them. Yeah. Which most did not. And even then, they had not held the championship simultaneously. The great Bob Fitzsimmons had won the middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight titles in succession. Otherwise, no one had ever threatened to do what Armstrong was about to attempt. Hold 3 belts at one time. Bob Fitzsimmons was the only one that had 3 titles in 3 different divisions at that time, but he didn't hold them simultaneously. He was the only 3 division champion. Armstrong was attempting to hold them at the same time. Now, the featherweight and welterweight championships were his already. A win over Ambers would mean Henry also held the lightweight crown at the same time. An extraordinary, unprecedented feat. One that would automatically make him one of the greatest boxers who had ever lived. But now we circle back to the question of greatness. And we recall that while Cerrone and Ross represented the formidable opponents, the former was a solid underdog and the latter was past his best days. The Ambers was a different story. Young, game, and in his prime. The champion had more than proven his mettle with wins over Tony Canzonieri, Jimmy Vaughn, Baby Arizmendi, and Pedro Montanez. Bottom line, Ambers was great. He was going to do all he could to test the greatness of Armstrong. That he did, and thus, the first Armstrong versus Ambers clash was a 15-round classic, one of the truly great battles in ring history. This was Armstrong Ambers 1 right here. Now, the early rounds saw Armstrong, the aggressor, setting a wicked pace and outworking Ambers with his whirling, non-stop attack. And at the end of round 5, a powerful right to the jaw put Ambers down. But the bell saved him from having to beat the count. Yeah, Armstrong was like Aaron Pryor is the reincarnation of Henry Armstrong. If you've seen Aaron Pryor fight, you've seen Henry Armstrong fight, okay? Yeah, the bell saved Ambers in that 5th round. Now, round 6 saw Armstrong in command and administering a heavy battery, and a big right hand put Ambers down again, this time for a count of 8. When Lou rose, Henry was all over him, pressuring relentlessly and pounding home vicious body blows. You just imagine how after Aaron Pryor would get somebody down, how he would go in for the kill. That's exactly what Armstrong was doing, pounding home vicious body blows. But if Henry was winning, he was also taking his share of punishment in a grueling toe-to-toe war. Armstrong versus Ambers was proving to be a vicious slugfest. Both men pitching and catching. And now Ambers was rebounding, taking the fight to Henry and winning rounds. By the 10th round, Armstrong was clearly ahead, but he had suffered a deep gash inside his mouth, along with cuts to both eyes. At the end of the 10th round, referee Billy Kavanaugh came to Henry's corner and announced he was going to stop the fight. "Don't stop it," said Henry. "I'm winning this fight." "The ring is full of blood," replied the referee, "and it's your blood." "Then I'll stop bleeding," said the irrepressible homicide Hank. Hank said, "Then I'll stop bleeding." Okay. Now, yeah, Ambers, homicide Hank, and they called Ambers the Herkimer Hurricane, right? And he came on strong in the late rounds. The Herkimer Hurricane came on strong in the late rounds. Yes, he did. When the bell rang for round 11, Henry refused his mouthpiece, the better to keep the blood in his mouth from escaping. And for the next 5 rounds, he swallowed his own gore as he pursued and pounded away. But in round 13, it was Ambers who dug deep, finally blunting Armstrong's attack with his own offensive output and sparking a late round rally that thrilled the crowd. Yeah, the crowd was on their feet, going crazy. It was not enough to change the outcome, but at the final bell, it was a dazed and exhausted Armstrong, not Ambers, who stumbled on failing legs back to his corner. This is one for the ages. The final decision was close, but primarily because Kavanaugh had taken 3 rounds from Armstrong for low blows. But you couldn't tell that the most in the New York crowd that night. When the verdict was announced, the rafters of the garden shook from the roar of an angry mob, the spectators booing the decision and showering the ring with garbage. The fans were inspired by the courage of Ambers and his heroic late round rally. And instead of applauding the new Triple Crown King for his astonishing achievement, they decried what they regarded as an unjust outcome. Yeah, the crowd thought the Herkimer Hurricane, Ambers, had won. There's Hank after the fight, and exhausted but happy Armstrong in the dressing room after the fight. But if in fact Henry Armstrong clearly deserved the victory, it has still been a rough, punishing, action-packed struggle. And in his dressing room afterwards, the new champion declared it to be his all-time roughest and toughest fight. "I'm sick and I'm almost out of my head with pain," he told reporters. And even years later, after his career ended, the legendary champion asserted that his first battle with Ambers was his toughest title fight. Yep, Homicide Hank admitted that was his toughest battle right there. The one with Lou Ambers. Lou Ambers won because they fought twice. That was one of the greatest legendary fights in boxing history. And there they are. But such is the price of greatness. No one will ever question the fact that Henry Armstrong is pound for pound one of the finest fighters to ever step through the ropes, a true legend. And he achieved that lofty status by fighting and beating other great fighters, including Barney Ross, Seferino Garcia, Benny Bass, Baby Arizmendi, Frankie Click, Lou Jenkins, and Fritzy Zivit. And of course, one Lou Ambers, who most reluctantly surrendered his world lightweight title to Armstrong in a brutal war, and in so doing, guaranteed the greatness of Homicide Hank. There you have the fight of the day. On my top 10 all-time list, I got Homicide Hank number 3. The only one that's in front of him is Muhammad Ali and Sugar Ray Robinson. Yeah, I got Homicide Hank number 3 all time. Okay, so let's talk about George Foreman, his 4 signature fights. Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, Michael Moorer. We're going to do them in the order they happened. Joe Frazier was first of the 4. Smoking Joe. How's everybody? It's Tuesday afternoon. And by the way, today is my birthday too. Okay. Me and Attentive Ed McQueen's birthday. About 30 years in between us. I am 6 decades and 6 years old today. I figured that out. 6 decades and 6 years. Okay. That big 6'6". Still going. I'm a young 66, okay? Still going strong. Yeah, we're going to talk about Big George and his 4 signature fights, though. First, we're going to start off with Joe Frazier. We're going to talk about some events that were happening surrounding the fights at the time they happened. Lead up to the fight aftermath. Yeah, today. Yeah, they've been Smoking Joe. Yeah, you know, you think about Foreman, Frazier, Norton, Ali, and of course, nobody can forget Michael Moorer, what Big George accomplished that night when he became and still is the oldest man to ever win the heavyweight championship. Big George Foreman. Okay. All right. Yeah, Foreman and Frazier is first. There you go, right there. Hit the like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Okay, this is Foreman Frazier. The shocking, iconic title fight. Now, the menacing George Foreman, who knocked out 34 of his first 37 opponents, stared down the shorter Joe Frazier during the weigh-in prior to their heavyweight fight over 50 years ago, okay? Foreman prayed Frazier wouldn't drop his gaze. I'm so glad he didn't look down because my knees were shaking, Foreman said. I didn't fear anyone except Joe Frazier. I watched his fights, and he was like a machine. If you hit him, he liked it. If you missed, he got angry and came after you. I hope something would have happened to him before I'd ever have to fight him for the title. Unfortunately for Frazier, plenty happened to him on January 22nd, 1973, in one of boxing history's most brutal heavyweight championship fights, which included 6 knockdowns and spawned the infamous "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier" call from announcer Howard Cosell. Now, the fight was so savage that Foreman yelled to his manager and to referee Arthur Mercante to stop the fight before I kill him. Okay? Foreman's victory remains the highlight of his Hall of Fame boxing career, and it was Frazier's worst defeat. Just 2 years after his greatest triumph, in his classic fight with Muhammad Ali, won in the fight of the century. Yeah, that came 2 years after that. His biggest win. 2 years later, his worst loss. And that's one reason why his loss to Foreman was so shocking. Frazier came in at 29-0 with 25 knockouts, right? He entered the fight with fewer fights than Foreman, but was more experienced, with 10 consecutive title defenses against better competition. That made Foreman a 4-1 underdog coming in, right? And the fight also matched the last 2 as U.S. Olympians to win gold medals. Frazier in 1964, and Foreman in 1968. Yep. And of course, Ali had won it in 1960. They had their triple crown, right? And now they had Foreman and Frazier, the last two United States gold medalists, in the ring together. Months before their fight, billed as the Sunshine Showdown at the National Stadium in Kingston, Jamaica, Ali and Frazier wouldn't come to a financial agreement on a rematch. So Frazier decided instead to sign for $850,000 and Foreman for $375,000, right? And the fight was in Jamaica because it was mostly financed by the Jamaican government. My trainers didn't know I had this fear of Frazier, said Foreman. They told me to stare him down, but I didn't want to upset Frazier. At a press conference, Frazier said what he planned to do to me. After being egged on, I told Frazier to shut up. Right after I said it, I'm thinking, how does that come out of my mouth? And you know what happened? Frazier shut up. Okay. It is the stare down they was talking about. You know, Foreman said he was praying Frazier didn't look down because Foreman said his knees were shaking. He was so scared. He said he was scared of Joe Frazier. I'm glad Frazier didn't look down because my knees were shaking. Now, styles make fights. That's a phrase often used in boxing, which in this case means the differences in Foreman and Frazier's styles. And that meant trouble for Frazier. Foreman was a bigger man, just under 6'4" and 217 pounds, while Frazier came in at 6 foot and 214. Yeah, right. Joe Frazier ain't never been 6 foot in his life. I was probably close, about 5'11". About that though. But George had a good 45 inches on him. Appreciate you, Shawa. Yeah, George had a good 45 inches on him. That meant George was going to punch down. He was very good at that, said longtime boxing writer Jerry Eisenberg. Frazier was never 6 feet, even if he had on elevator shoes. He was closer to 5'10". He always fought in a crouch. So in a sense, Foreman was fighting a 5'8" guy, and they gave Foreman a real advantage. Foreman's camp planned for him to establish himself as the bully by not allowing the usually swarming Frazier to get close by pushing him out of range, followed by a pistol-like jab. Now, Frazier's style was made for Foreman, said former boxing announcer Larry Merchant, and it really was. And Foreman quickly established his presence by making his swing at Frazier immediately at the start of the fight. And he missed. Foreman said, I missed him really good, but then I got into boxing position. I intended to box and jab. Foreman's well-laid plans would change. The usually crouching Frazier was up too high, and it cost him dearly. At about 1 minute 40 seconds of the first round, Foreman stunned Frazier with a left hook, followed by a left-right combination, and then a right uppercut that sent Frazier to the canvas, prompting Cosell's legendary call. I was shocked with the knockdown because he was so tough, and I thought to knock him down, it would have taken a grunt or strain, Foreman said. Now, Frazier rose to his feet and took a mandatory 8 count. And Frazier being Frazier, aka Smoking Joe, he went straight back at Foreman. But a series of blows, followed by another punishing uppercut, sent Smoking Joe back to the canvas. But again, Frazier got up, went right back at Big George again. And Frazier said, That left me out there as a target for George's fully extended uppercuts. He wrote that in his autobiography. It was like a deer caught in a motorist's headlights. There's nothing to do but wait for the impact. And that night, I didn't have to wait long. Yeah, he went down 6 times. 6 times. Now, like I said, Frazier rose a second time and received another 8 count. With only a few seconds left in the round, Foreman moved in and swarmed Frazier with a volley of blows that sent him down for a third time. The bell rang to end the round, but the referee continued another 8 count because the rules made it mandatory that a down fighter couldn't be saved by the bell. Foreman was clearly in control, but there was a brief moment earlier in the round that could have changed history. Frazier threw that famous left hook and it grazed my head, Foreman said. It just missed me. It sounded like a bullet. I quickly thought about how that left hook had Ali's legs in the air and how that left hook folded Jimmy Ellis. If Frazier would have got that left hook, it might have changed history. Might have ended that fight early. But the onslaught continued in round 2. Frazier was still game as he threw 2 early left hooks, landing 1. But Foreman staggered Frazier in the corner with an overhand right. Foreman continued to rain punches as Frazier attempted to escape by the bunny hop, but Foreman landed a chopping right hand to his jaw for knockdown number 4. Okay, went down 3 times in the first round. Second round, knockdown number 4. I'm thinking, maybe his corner will stop the fight, Foreman said. I've seen Joe Frazier go down before and get up. I'm thinking, I better not wait around for this guy to get himself together, or I'm going to get into trouble. But trouble never came. Shortly after Frazier rose for the 4th time, he went down behind a Foreman left hand and he began bleeding from his lower lip. Somehow, the referee Arthur Mercante allowed the onslaught to continue. After another standing 8 count, and while Frazier was against the ropes, Foreman attacked. And as Cosell said on the telecast, it's target practice. A right uppercut lifted Frazier off the canvas and dropped him to one knee. I'd been knocked down before. The Foreman was the only guy who'd really hurt me, Frazier wrote in his autobiography. If you're a champion of the world, you don't make plans for getting your butt whooped. When it happens, it comes as a shock, like, what the hell happened? The fight was finally called, and Foreman was declared winner by TKO. He was carried out of the ring and through the crowd of 40,000 by his team. I've never told anyone this, but that was the happiest time of my life in boxing because I worked so hard to fulfill my dream and become heavyweight champion, Foreman said. It was the first and last moment I felt that. That was Foreman's first title that night right there when he beat Smoking Joe. Yeah. And there's Big George celebrating. Winning the title not only shook up Foreman's life, but it also staggered the world of boxing. Foreman's victory meant the highly anticipated rematch between Ali and Frazier would be put on hold. Ali and Frazier, too, did happen the following year, but it didn't have the same zeal as the first fight. Yeah, the second one wasn't a title fight. Well, Ali had the minor title, the NABF, but everybody thought it was going to be for the Undisputed because everybody expected Joe Frazier to beat George Foreman. So, yeah, Foreman kind of took a little of the luster off Ali Frazier too when he lifted those titles off of Frazier. Now, Foreman's victory was devastating because more people wanted to see Frazier against Ali. Jerry Eisenberg said, boxing writer, famous boxing writer from back then. When they did fight, neither wanted to be in the ring because neither one had a title. If I was there as a spectator, I would have walked out after 4 or 5 rounds. Foreman's victory brought on a deluge of personal issues, from some deals made by the team that he didn't approve to litigation from a Houston promoter who claimed he had an agreement for a title fight. Foreman was also going through a divorce at the time. I'm in an elevator at the courthouse, and my soon-to-be ex-wife was in there with her 3 lawyers, looking like she didn't even know me, Foreman said. That was painful, and it added to my anger. Winning the title was like winning the lottery. One day you're no one, and the next day everyone wants to take advantage of you. Foreman would only defend his title twice before losing to Ali in the historic Rumble in the Jungle championship fight in Zaire, Africa. We're going to get to that too. Now, Foreman took nearly 2 years off before returning to the ring. His return included 6 fights, including another knockout of Frazier, until he retired in 1977 and became a born-again Christian after a loss to Jimmy Young. Foreman would open a youth center, returning to boxing 10 years later at age 38 to raise money for the George Foreman Youth and Community Center. Regained the heavyweight title at age 45, retired for the final time at age 48, and signed a multi-million-dollar deal to become the pitchman for a kitchen appliance in his name, the George Foreman Grill. Foreman spent time serving as minister of North Houston's Church of the Lord Jesus Christ and on his ranch in Marshall, Texas. His life certainly made many changes after his win over 50 years ago. Winning a heavyweight title was a great moment, Foreman said. If something ever happens bad to me, like wrecking my car, I could always fall back and reminisce on that title. And if you'd ask why I'm smiling, it's because of that. Big George. Okay, that was Big George and Smoking Joe. Just Do Boxing and Mike Mazik in the building. Salute, gentlemen. We reliving George Foreman. 4 signature fights. Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, and of course, Michael Moore. Okay, so now we go to Ken Norton. I would say those were the 4 signature fights of his career. Frazier, Norton, the loss to Ali, and then regaining the title 20 years later against Michael Moore after losing. And he set all kinds of records in that fight. Okay, yeah, let's go to Foreman and Norton. Now, I had said the other week that Foreman and Moore had the biggest age differential in a heavyweight championship fight, but nope, they don't. It was Archie Moore and Floyd Patterson. Foreman was 19 years older than Moore, but Archie Moore was 21 years older than Floyd Patterson, so that was the biggest age differential in a championship fight. And Archie Moore had turned pro before Floyd Patterson was even born, right? And they ended up fighting for the title. Yeah, we talked about that yesterday. That fight was historic because Patterson and Moore, it was either going to crown the oldest heavyweight champion ever or the youngest ever. And Patterson won it and became the youngest ever. Yep, so that fight was going to be historic either way. Either the oldest or the youngest heavyweight champion in history. Isn't that something? Archie Moore and Floyd Patterson. Archie Moore was fighting before Floyd was even born, and they ended up in the ring together. Wow. Yeah, we did the, excuse me, Patterson, Johansson trilogy yesterday. Okay, so now let's talk about Foreman and Ken Norton. Another demolishment. Is that a word? Demolishment? But yeah, that's what this was. Just like Frazier. And that's what made when Ali beat him so astonishing, because both Frazier and Norton had beaten Ali, right? But see, styles make fights. And then everybody said, well, Foreman going to kill Ali. But look what happened. Ali ended up winning the fight. Okay, bear with me for a moment, please. Get this going for us. Oh, okay. Let's see what I did. But how's everyone today? It's Tuesday. Still early. Big week of boxing history we are embarking on. Here we go. Yeah, George versus Ken Norton. Yeah, today is my birthday. Thank you, Miss Cass. I had already got a new laptop like a couple weeks ago, because remember I poured water in the other one during the show that time? Yeah. Miss Cass said, that's your birthday present. But she got me another one. Okay, yeah, let's get to Ken Norton and George Foreman now. Okay? Yeah, we're going to cover his 4 signature fights, I think. Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, and yeah, that's Archie Moore right there. That was George Foreman's trainer. And Michael Moore. Okay. Excuse me for a moment. 1 more, 2 minutes. Okay. All these interruptions. I don't know what's going on now. Bear with me, please. Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah, Norton is next. Okay, well, give me 2 minutes and we're going to continue. Okay? Sorry. Oh, it's raining. Okay. I'm getting ready. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm back. Okay, let's continue. Sorry about the interruption. Okay, now we go to George Foreman and Kenny Norton, which was another demolishment. Man, I don't know. I can't get the thing to move. I miss my old laptop. There we go. Okay, you're Foreman and Norton now. There we go. First picture. George Foreman versus Ken Norton. Big George with a spectacular knockout. Appreciate you, Just Do. Boxing. Coming up at 4 p.m. Giving everybody the Just Do over there. Balanced, unbiased boxing talk. Okay. George Foreman versus Ken Norton. Looking at George's 4 signature fights. Frazier, Norton, Ali, and of course Michael Moore. The big one when he came back and shocked the world and won the heavyweight title. Okay, now. The serene, oh my goodness, man. Bear with me, man. I don't know. Here we go. The serene backdrop of Caracas, Venezuela, stood in sharp contrast to the concussive brutality that George Foreman inflicted on Ken Norton in the second defense of his heavyweight championship on March 26, 1974, 51 years ago. In just 5 minutes of action, the Adonis-like fighter from Jacksonville was blasted to the canvas 3 times by the hammering blows of Foreman, who improved his record to 40-0 with 37 knockouts by a second-round stoppage. Okay? Now, after Sonny Liston and before Mike Tyson was Foreman, all 3 were passed. All 3 were cast in the same mold. Former street muggers turned knockout artists who instilled fear in their opponents long before a punch was even thrown. The tagline "Invincible" was handed down to the trio during their respective heavyweight title reigns, though history will show that this was overpraised. A former Olympic champion, Foreman had wrenched the greatest prize in sport from the previously unbeaten Joe Frazier in January 1973. The colossal Texan battered Smoking Joe to the canvas 3 times in round 1 and repeated the dosage in round 2 before the destruction was brought to a halt. Yeah, we just covered that, remember? 3 times in round 1, 3 times in round 2. It is him and Ken. For an encore, Foreman gave Japan its first ever heavyweight championship fight when it took on the unheralded and thoroughly incapable Jose Roman in September of that year. It was a dreadful mismatch that could easily have ended in a fatality. Foreman mutilated the Puerto Rican challenger, throwing him twice before finishing the job with a spectacular right uppercut. Now, Ken Norton came into this fight 30 wins, 2 losses. And he enjoyed a career-defining 1973. In March of that year, the ex-Marine, then ranked number 7 in the world, broke the jaw of Muhammad Ali and won a 12-round split decision over the greatest. One of the biggest upsets in heavyweight boxing history. The win catapulted Norton into the big time. And even though Ali avenged the loss by split decision 5 months later, many felt that Norton deserved that win too in the second fight, including yours truly. But the judges didn't, so that's what counts. Over a year into his title reign with only 1 defense against cannon fodder, Foreman was given a deadline by the WBA and WBC. Again, that was undisputed at the time. WBA, WBC were the only big major sanctioning bodies then. And Foreman was given a deadline by both of them. The message was simple. Fight a worthy contender or else you'll be stripped. Now, with Ali and Frazier poised to fight each other for a second time, Foreman opted to take on the most formidable challenger he could find. At the official press conference announcing the Norton fight, a reporter asked why the sport's #1 heavyweight was so inactive. Past champions have a lot of contenders, said Foreman, before taking a thinly veiled swipe at Ali. Certain people never hurt anybody. He leads them on their feet and dance, and the guy would be following him around the ring. After I fight people, nobody follows me around saying, "I'll get you next time," or "I want a rematch." Yeah, Big George said he leave him laying on the mat. There's him and Ken. Right there. So, the Foreman Norton fight was marred by controversy. During fight week, the champs team insisted on an American referee, but the request was declined. Shortly thereafter, reports emerged that Foreman had sustained an injury to his knee, which meant the fight was now in jeopardy. The commission got the message. With just hours until fight time, the Seattle-based Jimmy Rondeau was drafted in as the third man in the ring, and Foreman's mysterious ailment cleared up in a flash. He made it an injury that Foreman's team wanted an American referee over there, and the commission said no. So Foreman faked the injury, and sure enough, they came up with an American referee out of Seattle, Washington, Jimmy Rondeau. And mysteriously, Foreman's injury cleared up all of a sudden. So the fight went on. Now, so confident was Don King of a Foreman win that the bombastic promoter had already opened negotiations for a Foreman Ali fight in Kinshasa, Zaire, right? Yeah, he was negotiating with Ali Foreman before he even fought Norton. That's how confident Don King was that Foreman was going to beat Norton. Even the purses, a record $5 million for each fighter, were made public before he even fought Norton. The purses for him and Ali's fight were made public. As it turned out, King had every reason to be confident. Yeah, the way the fight turned out. Ali, who was stationed ringside in the role of an analyst, had avenged his loss to Frazier 2 months earlier and was now the #1 contender for the title. But the former champ was tipping Norton to upset Foreman. And those expectations were bolstered when Norton boxed effectively in round 1. Any man that goes 24 rounds with me has got to be great. And ain't no George Foreman, who's still a good amateur, gonna destroy Ken Norton. Because I didn't do it, said Ali. He said, because I couldn't do it. That's what Ali said. Norton went 24 rounds with him, and ain't no way George Foreman gonna beat him. Because I couldn't do it, said Ali. He's not gonna destroy Ken Norton. Just over 2 minutes later, Ali would have egg on his face. Trapped against the ropes and under fire in round 2, Norton attempted to exit left and was caught by a powerful right hand to the jaw. Confident that the punch had an effect, Foreman followed up with a left and 5 consecutive right hands, the last of which blasted a stricken Norton after the ropes had already held him up. Norton remained woozy throughout Rondeau's count, and he had the legs of a drunken man trying to stay erect in a high wind. When the action continued, Foreman rushed in and sent the challenger sprawling into the ropes again without landing a clean blow. Norton was doomed. Immediately after, the second 8 count was administered. Foreman pounced like a lion on easy prey. The 5-punch combination that followed, 2 lefts, 2 rights, and a terminal left, is perhaps the finest and most brutal finish of Foreman's Hall of Fame career. Incredibly, Norton got back to his feet before the 10 count was completed, but he was in no condition to take a sip of water, far less defend himself against a power-punching destroyer like Big George Foreman. Rondeau called the fight over at 2 minutes of round 2. Yeah, he didn't let Foreman would have hurt him after that. The referee wisely ended it. The talk of Foreman being an invincible fighter only got louder following this crushing triumph over Norton. "I'm gonna whip George Foreman," an animated Ali told commentator Colonel Bob Sheridan at ringside as the pair discussed the forthcoming Rumble in the Jungle. "He can't hit me with that stuff. I'm a professional." The rest, as they say, is history. So let's see what happened. Did Ali make his prediction come true, or did Foreman get him up out of there like everybody thought he was going to do? Let's see. What happened? Because I forgot. Anybody remember who won, Ali or Foreman? They thought Foreman was going to destroy Ali, right? But Ali said, "He ain't hit me with that stuff." Okay, so let's see. Okay, Ali versus Foreman is next. It is Norton at the end. It is our next. And then we're going to do also Michael Moorer. And when Big George came back and won that title at 45 years old, still the oldest man. But I gave out some misinformation. I was saying that was the biggest age differential between two fighters in the heavyweight championship fight. Foreman was 19 years older than Moorer, but it wasn't. Archie Moore was 21 years older than Floyd Patterson when they fought. So yeah, that was the biggest age differential in the championship fight. So Foreman only broke 2 records. It was the longest time between a fighter losing and getting the championship back, 20 years, and still the oldest man to win the title. That was correct. But yeah, Archie Moore was fighting before Floyd Patterson was even born. Right? Mm-hmm. And Floyd met him at 21 years old. Yeah, Archie had damn near 30 years in the ring by the time he fought Floyd Patterson. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But Archie was still a dominant fighter, though. He wasn't just sitting there. He was still winning. I believe he was the light heavyweight champion at the time. He held that for 10 straight years. You know, he started out as a mongoose, and by that time, he was the old mongoose. Yeah. Archie. But now the Rumble in the Jungle. Ali and Foreman. Ali had picked Norton to win that fight, but Norton couldn't get it done. So Ali said, "I got to take care of him." He hit me with that stuff. Let's see. The Rumble in the Jungle, 51 years ago. It was 1974. Now, if it wasn't for Don King's persistence, George Foreman's divorce, and an unexpected late-night meeting in a Livermore, California parking lot, the world might not be celebrating the legendary 1974 Rumble in the Jungle. We wouldn't be talking about it today. Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Rumble in the Jungle, held on October 30th, 1974 in Kinshasa, Zaire. It's now the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It remains one of the most legendary sporting events in history. The fight between heavyweight champion Big George Foreman and challenger Muhammad Ali transcended boxing, capturing the world's attention in a way that few events had before or since. Even today, over 50 years later, the fight continues to resonate with millions across the globe through endless rebroadcasts, documentaries, and YouTube videos viewed by generations of boxing fans. Generations. Now, this fight was far more than just a clash between two great boxers. It was an event of global, cultural, and political significance. Promoted by the Zen newcomer, Don King, the fight was an audacious spectacle, with both fighters paid an unprecedented $5 million each. I guess that's what, 20, 30 million a day? Now, King, alongside the backing of Zaire's president, Mobutu Sese Seko, saw this as an opportunity to put Africa and Zaire on the map as a hub of international attention. Now, the fight was just one part of a larger celebration, which included the famous Zaire 74 Music Festival, featuring global icons like B.B. King, Bill Withers, and the godfather of soul himself headlined the event, James Brown. Okay? They made a movie out of that concert too. I forgot the name of it, but yeah, Don King. Don King put on boxing shows, not just fights, boxing shows. Okay? So, George Foreman entered the fight as the undefeated heavyweight champion and a towering force in the boxing world. His rise to prominence had been swift and decisive. Just a year prior, Foreman had demolished Joe Frazier in 2 rounds, knocking him down 6 times in the process. He had similarly dispatched Ken Norton, another man who had previously beaten Ali, and he dispatched Ken Norton also in just 2 rounds. At 25 years old, Foreman was at the height of his powers, younger, stronger, and seen by many as an unstoppable force. Seen by many as unstoppable, okay? In Africa, however, things were different. Now, while Foreman had his fans, Ali connected deeply with the local population. His larger-than-life personality, combined with his vocal advocacy for civil rights and African heritage, made him a symbol of pride for many. The chants of Ali Bamaye, which means Ali killing, echoed across Kinshasa during his stay, a testament to the bond he had forged with the people of Zaire. Muhammad Ali, at age 32, was seen by many as past his prime. Having been stripped of his title 7 years earlier for refusing to serve in the Vietnam War, Ali's career had been turbulent. He had lost to Joe Frazier in the iconic fight of the century in 1971 and had struggled in his rematch with Ken Norton after losing to Norton. Yet, Ali remained confident both in his abilities and in his secret strategy for Foreman. Yeah, Ali had a secret weapon coming in, right? Angelo Dundee, his trainer, didn't even know about the rope-a-dope. Angelo said he learned about the rope-a-dope like everybody else did during the fight. Angelo didn't even know about the rope-a-dope, okay? Now, few gave Ali a chance in this fight. The media, including the iconic Halbert Cosell, predicted that Ali would be overwhelmed by Foreman's youth and strength. But Ali, ever the showman and strategist, had different plans. He spent much of the fight employing his now famous rope-a-dope technique, leaning against the ropes and letting Foreman unleash his powerful punches. By absorbing the punishment on his arms and body, Ali let Foreman tire himself out, conserving his own energy for a late round assault. Okay? Yeah, that's when he came off the ropes right there. That was the beginning of the end for Foreman. Right there, yeah. The fight took place at 4 o'clock a.m. local time to accommodate American viewers in prime time. Over 60,000 spectators crowded into the 20th of May Stadium in Kinshasa, with millions more watching on closed-circuit television around the world. Now, Ali's rope-a-dope strategy baffled both Foreman and the audience. Foreman's punches, which had previously demolished other fighters, now seemed ineffective as Ali absorbed them with a grin on his face, mocking Foreman throughout the early rounds, right? Mocking Foreman. Appreciate you, Mike Mazik. Crush the Legend. Shaba. Just Do. What we got? Just Do Boxing. Mike Mazik. Shawa. Mike Rim. 21YGL. Greenlight. Crush the Legend. And Miss Cass. Okay, appreciate everybody. 1,000,000%. Yeah, Ali was absorbing the punches and mocking Foreman. You know, like my grandmother slapped me one time. It hurt more than that. You know, stuff like that he was telling Foreman, right? By the 8th round, Foreman was visibly exhausted. Sensing the moment, Ali unleashed a flurry of punches, including a perfectly timed right hand that sent Foreman crashing to the canvas. Foreman, for the first time in his career, failed to beat the count. Ali had done the impossible. He had knocked out the seemingly invincible Big George Foreman and reclaimed the heavyweight title that had been stripped from him years earlier. And at that time, Ali was only the second man. Well, he didn't lose it, but he was only the second man that got the heavyweight title back after having won it previously. Floyd Patterson was the other one. Floyd Patterson had got beaten by Ingemar Johansson in the 50s, and then he won it back. Ali was only the second man ever to get the heavyweight title back. Again, he didn't lose, he was stripped. And Ali did it 3 times. And the only other man in history to do it was Evander Holyfield, who did it 4 times. Okay? Regained it 4 times. Only 3 have done that, heavyweights. The Rumble in the Jungle is often viewed as Muhammad Ali's crowning achievement, not just for his skill in the ring, but for the cultural significance of the victory. Ali's win cemented his status as a global icon, transcending boxing to become a symbol of resilience, strategy, and personal conviction. The victory also solidified Don King's position as a major force in boxing promotion, giving him the credibility and influence that would last for decades. Yeah, Don King's still promoting right now, okay? Still promoting right now. That was 51 years ago when that took place. It is Big George right there. Yeah, they thought Big George was unbeatable. Now, for George Foreman, the loss was devastating, and it took years for him to reconcile with it. But in the years following the fight, Foreman and Ali developed a deep respect for each other, eventually becoming close friends. Foreman would later reflect that his defeat in Zaire was a pivotal moment in his life, shaping his personal and professional journey. Ali, ever the larger-than-life character, once remarked that Foreman was the greatest fighter he ever faced, a testament to the respect both men held for each other. Foreman himself made history 20 years later by becoming the oldest man to win the heavyweight title, and still is to this day. And let's talk, well, not finished yet, almost. Now, the Rumble in the Jungle is not just a boxing match. It's a piece of cultural history. It's a piece of cultural history. It just wasn't just a boxing match. a piece of cultural history. There we go. It is Ali on the ropes with the rope-a-dope strategy. Damn. That one looked kind of low, Big George. Okay. Yeah, the Rumble in the Jungle is not just a boxing match. It is a piece of cultural history. The fight was watched by an estimated 1 billion people, an astonishing figure considering the technology of the time, right? 1,074,000,000. In the decades since, the fight has been immortalized in documentaries like When We Were Kings, rebroadcast on major networks, and endless YouTube views, proving that the magic of that night in Zaire has stood the test of time. Today, over 50 years later, this legendary event, we remember the power of one night of heavyweight boxing, where two of the greatest fighters ever met under the African sky, and the world watched as history unfolded. The Rumble in the Jungle's legend, much like the fighters who participated in it, will continue to grow with time, outlasting the name of Zaire itself, and standing as one of the greatest moments in the history of sports, not just boxing, the history of sports. Okay, and finally, fast forward 20 years after the Rumble in the Jungle, okay, to Foreman and that's Ali when he was in the lead up to the fight. The African people loved him. Yeah, there he is. That was over when he was over in the lead up to the fight. There's Don King. That's the president of Zaire. Kinshasa. Oh, Zaire, I believe, to Don King's right, in the white. No, next to Don King on the other side. Yeah. Okay. But now we're gonna fast forward to I didn't show none of my pictures. Wow, wait. Made all these pictures that didn't even show them. Yeah, that was the one where Ali, the one that got Foreman, where he came off the ropes with that right hand we just talked about. Yeah, that was the one that did him in, right there. Yeah, Ali came off of them ropes like he'd been shot out of a cannon. You know, the whole time he was peeping through the gloves and, seeing if Foreman was ready yet. And then he finally, said, I got him right where I want him. And I told y'all, remember, Foreman said he hit Ali in the, the 6th round. And he said, that's the hardest he ever hit anyone. And Ali just looked at him and said, that's all you got, George? And George said, that was when I realized this ain't what I thought it was going to be. Right? That's when he realized he was getting ready to get beat. But Ali just looked back at him, That all you got, George? Okay, now, George and Michael Moore. Okay, let's get that going. This will be the 4th one. This 4 of Foreman's signature fight. 4 signature fights, I would say. Frazier, Norton, Ali, Moore. This is definitely one of his signature fights here against Michael Moore. That one where he got the title back. Still the oldest heavyweight champion to this day. He was the oldest champion in boxing history until B-Hop broke that, but he's still the oldest heavyweight champion to this day. Okay? Yes, he is. So this is George Foreman versus Michael Moore. More than just a one punch knockout. Okay. There we go. Okay, yeah, there's Moore on the mat. That's how it ended up. Right there. Okay, let's talk about this one. This was in 1994. Okay. Yeah. So 31 years ago, right? Was the night when it happened, when the impossible dream was fulfilled and a great fighter became a legend. At age 45, former heavyweight champion George Foreman became the oldest man to win the heavyweight crown in the 7th year of a most unlikely comeback run. The fight itself has become part of boxing folklore and is marked by, among other things, the contrast between Foreman and Michael Moorer, two men from different generations with markedly different backgrounds and personalities. But if you look closer, you will find some intriguing similarities. A young Foreman, in fact, shares some significant resemblance to the seemingly dark nature of the young Moorer, who will certainly go down as one of the most misunderstood of heavyweight champions. It is Big George when he won the gold medal in '68, right there. But if there's a misinterpretation about these men, there's an even more profound misunderstanding about the night they clashed for the heavyweight championship of the world, about an outcome that, in retrospect, shouldn't be so shocking. More than a few boxing historians have noted that the 45-year-old version of Foreman was, at least in some respects, a better fighter than the 1970s version. That in an imaginary matchup between the two, the older man would win. Now, if we allow that to be a possible truth and look at Moorer versus Foreman from that perspective, then his great victory becomes something less than astonishing. It also allows us to acknowledge that it was something more than a one-punch knockout. Look at it from that point of view, Foreman might have went in favored, right? Now, Foreman was born in Marshall, Texas, and raised in Houston, one of 7 children, and from the age of 5, had no father at home. Now, young George soon became a product of the streets, and while far from being free of the demons which haunted him for much of his youth, finding boxing instilled a sense of discipline, and his talent carried him all the way to Olympic gold. At age 19, as a pro, Foreman's rage manifested itself in the fearsome displays of punching power. When he knocked the undefeated heavyweight champion Joe Frazier down 6 times en route to a second-round knockout, Foreman instantly became the most feared heavyweight champion since Sonny Liston's a decade prior to that. Instantly became the most feared after what he did to Frazier. Yeah, that's Smoking Joe right there. Foreman's brutal stoppage of Frazier shocked the boxing world. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier, remember? Shocked the world. So, now while Big George's reign was short, it was solemn and dark. Hardly engaging the press, fans, or even fellow opponents, as he mowed down the likes of Jose Roman and Ken Norton with seeming ease. Now, before he faced former champion Muhammad Ali in Zaire, many words for Ali's well-being, including novelist Bud Schulberg, who predicted that George could hurt him badly. Broadcaster Halbert Cosell stated that the time may have come to say goodbye to Muhammad Ali. And the New York Times predicted he would be knocked out in the first round. Okay? We think the Big George was going to stop Ali in 1. Now, contrary to expectations, Foreman was outclassed, outsmarted, and eventually outgunned by Ali, who watched as Zach Clayton counted Foreman out. Now, the loss would go on to psychologically scar Foreman, who stated that it took years to live down the fact that he was no longer the heavyweight champion of the world. 3 years later, when George was beaten by Jimmy Young, Foreman, only 28 years old, retired from the fight game. Yeah, just like with Buster Douglas and Mike Tyson, that invincibility was gone. Same thing happened when Ali beat Foreman. Wasn't nobody scared of him anymore. They're like, he ain't invincible. Look what Ali did to him. Yeah. It is Zach Clayton standing over him counting him out right there. At that time of the Ali-Foreman fight, a 10-year-old Michael Moorer was about a year away from taking his first steps in a boxing ring. Okay? Eventually relocating from the hard knocks of Western Pennsylvania to the Kronk Gym in Detroit, the legendary trainer Emanuel Stewart helped guide him to amateur boxing prominence. His prodigious talents allowing him to dominate seasoned pros. With Moorer's immense potential, Stewart and Michael decided to bypass any attempt to make the 1988 Olympic team, and instead, Moorer turned pro. Okay? Well, they could have made that team, but he turned pro. Yeah, that would have been a battle, because Riddick Bowe was the heavyweight representative on that team, so Moorer would have had to battle him. Would have had to go through Riddick Bowe to be the heavyweight representative on that team. Okay, if he was at heavyweight, then okay, that was the Olympics where Lennox Lewis beat Riddick Bowe, remember? But amazingly, the year when he turned pro, that same year, Moorer won the WBO light heavyweight title in only his 12th professional fight. Although he was a light heavyweight as a pro, he still could have been a heavyweight in the Olympics because the amateur weight classes are different from the pros. Yeah, the weight limits are a little different. So yeah, Moorer in his first year, became the light heavyweight champion in only his 12th fight, right? After 9 successful title defenses, all by knockout, he moved up to heavyweight, where he won the WBO heavyweight title in a knockdown drag-out slugfest with Burt Cooper. But by this point, Emanuel Stewart had lost his grip on Moorer, claiming Double M lost an interest in training, and he eventually parted ways with the promising heavyweight. In essence, Moorer, like a young Foreman, was developing an autonomy and an insistence to dictate his career on his own terms that made it very difficult for others to connect with him. Yeah, Emanuel Stewart parted ways with him. Yeah, there's Double M right there. So Emanuel Stewart parts ways with him. That was probably a terrible move. Career probably would have went, because Emanuel Stewart looked out for his fighters. Okay, inside and outside the ring. Make sure the pay was right. They didn't get screwed over by promoters and managers and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So Moorer was not the crowd-pleasing, amicable heavyweight champion that Holyfield was, nor did he have the firepower of former champion Mike Tyson. By and large, Moorer was viewed by many as something of a placeholder champion, temporarily holding the belts while the likes of Riddick Bowe, Tyson, and Lennox Lewis awaited the opportunity to seize the throne. And what made things worse for Michael was he was something less than charismatic, often repelling people with his curt, angry responses. Clearly, these circumstances gave the champion something to prove in his first title defense against George Foreman. However, Moorer found himself in a lose-lose situation against an aging legend who was coming off more than a year of inactivity following a disappointing loss to Tommy Morrison. Getting the public's respect was never an easy task for Maurer. That's him and Holyfield right there. He beat Holyfield in April of 1994. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, Foreman had transformed from the reclusive mystery that once defined him in the first phase of his career into the jovial minister turned celebrity fighter who everyone loved. Okay? Your Foreman transformed himself. But whether or not fans still took Foreman's comeback seriously at this stage was becoming increasingly questionable, especially given the unimpressive performances against lower tier heavyweights, Tommy Morrison and Alex Stewart. Okay? But regardless of what the public made of his chances against the younger champion, Foreman entered the MGM Grand as the same kind of sentimental favorite that Muhammad Ali had been back in 1974 against him. The good guy on fight night was Big George. The bad guy was Michael Maurer. And there is Foreman and Maurer. Yeah, Foreman was a good guy. Maurer was the bad guy coming into this fight. Just like Foreman was the scowling, unapproachable champion against Ali, and Ali was the people's champion in 74. Foreman was on the other side of it, this time as the good guy. Now, while the fight itself often recalled as an astounding come-from-behind one-punch knockout win, it should never have been viewed that way. Despite Marvin's best efforts to shift the narrative of the fight to how George simply got lucky, Foreman he was 20 years older than he was in Zaire, also appeared to be 20 years wiser, even as his physique had become a caricature of his old self. Although Maurer outpunched Foreman for much of the contest, it was George who remained the ring general, applying constant pressure, subtly keeping Maurer inside his front foot, and slowly but surely drawing him into the range of his still potent right hand. Slowly but surely drawing him in the range. Perhaps Maurer's biggest mistake was the way he underestimated Foreman's power. In fact, many boxing experts did as well. HBO commentator Larry Merchant remarked during the fight that the myth of George's power was being exposed. And fellow commentator and veteran trainer Gil Clancy spent much of his commentary casting doubt on Foreman's viability as a legitimate threat. But despite losing round after round to the younger man, Foreman stayed focused and determined and faithful to his strategy, which was as simple as it was clever, and which banked on exploiting the natural advantages an older and wiser fighter possesses over a younger one. Not many realized it at the time, but Maurer was being slowly broken down by Foreman's constant pressure. And in fact, the champion was stunned more than once prior to the knockout, most notably in rounds 3 and 6, when George managed to land some hurtful blows. And if Maurer was establishing a clear-cut lead on the scorecards, he was also becoming increasingly flat-footed. In short, the young man was following the lead of the older, wiser man. Despite himself, he was acquiescing not to the counsel of Teddy Atlas's trainer, but to the persistent persuasion of Big George Foreman. and the toll of the constant punishment and pressure was growing. Even Mora, who afterwards was too proud to admit he was knocked out by anything but a lucky punch, eventually conceded that he was basically out on his feet before the dramatic finale. Early in the 10th round, Foreman landed a stiff right hand that appeared to stun Mora. Foreman followed up with several more lead rights and even a wild left hook that connected cleanly. And just when it appeared as though the champion had weathered the storm, Foreman followed up with a hard right to the forehead. No one knew it at the time, but that punch stunned Mora and froze him. That's what I was saying. He missed with that one. They got him in the forehead. On that one. Yeah. He caught him in the forehead, and that punch stunned and froze Mora. Okay? It was just a little too high, Foreman would later say. So, George adjusted his aim and fired again, and thus gave us one of the biggest shocks in pugilistic history. He adjusted. The first one was a little high, but the next punch was down on the chin, right? The next shot connected cleanly to Mora's chin and sent him to the canvas, where he lay for some seconds, gazing with glassy eyes at the ceiling of the MGM Grand. What no one at the time realized was how that one huge punch was in fact just the final coup de grace for a younger fighter who suddenly found himself hurting and overwhelmed. Referee Joe Cortez yelled, 10, and waved his arms, and HBO's Jim Lantley vocalized the emotion of the moment in one simple phrase: it happened. It happened. One simple phrase. It happened. And then a brief silence descended upon the HBO commentary staff, whose partner, George Foreman, had finally regained the heavyweight championship that he had lost 20 years before. Foreman, instead of exulting in celebration of his landmark accomplishment, was seen in the neutral corner, kneeled in prayer, as he had just beaten Jersey Joe Walcott's record to become the oldest heavyweight champion in history and the oldest fighter in history at that time, period, in any weight class. Yeah, Foreman also became the oldest man to win a world championship until B-Hop broke that a few years later. Yeah, there's Mora. Referee Joe Cortez waving it off. It happened. So, they say a fighter's power is the last thing that leaves him. But in the case of Big George Foreman, it was every bit his will and his guile as it was his punching power that secured his great victory on this night. He was no longer the disturbed young heavyweight champion in Zaire, who caved in under the pressure of the thousands of African fans yelling, Bombardier Ali, or Ali Bombardier, or the over-anxious heavyweight vulnerable to the ring wiles of Jimmy Young. Now it was he who was the veteran of the ring, teaching the younger fighter a painful lesson, who conned Michael Mora into fighting his fight, breaking him down with physically and mentally en route to one of the greatest achievements in sports history. Yep, there you have it. George Foreman's 4 signature fights: Frazier, Norton, Ali, and Michael Mora. Yep. Yeah, more than just a lucky punch. It certainly was. Definitely was more than just a lucky punch. Now, did y'all know one time that Tommy Hearns was thinking about fighting Mike Tyson? But Emmanuel Stewart had to talk him out of it. Yeah. The hitman was thinking about going in there against on Mike. And the man with Stewart said, no, come on, hitman. You got power and everything, but man, that's a little bit too much. They had to talk about, let's talk about that. You got like 15, 20 minutes left. Yeah. The hitman said, I want Iron Mike. But the man with Stewart said, hold up, slow your roll, hitman. I made you from a light hitting boxer and one of the most feared right hands in boxing, but I didn't do all that for you to go in there against Mike Tyson. There's a hitman. He made it all the way to, I think he made it all the way to cruiserweight. Yeah. That must have been when he was thinking about doing that. Yeah. I don't think he had a title at cruiserweight. I think he had titles all the way to light heavyweight, but he did fight as a cruiserweight. Yes, he did. Thomas the Hitman Hearns. Yeah, he was thinking about fighting Iron Mike one time. Let's discuss that. To finish off today's show. Hope everybody enjoyed the George Foreman portion of it. His 4 signature fights. Here we go. Nope. Okay, bear with me for a moment. We're going to get it in. Tomorrow is hump day. We still early. Yeah, I'm going to go to something else, then I'll find it. To the Atlas. Frazier. I can't find it. Try it one more time, then we're going to go to something else. Here we go. Yeah. The time the great Thomas Hearns was serious about fighting Mike Tyson, and Emmanuel Stewart talked him out of it. Rewind to the summer of 1981, and the all-time great Thomas Hearns was riding another high. The 32-year-old former welterweight, junior middleweight, and super middleweight champion, having won what was actually a second world title up at light heavyweight. And the hitman was giving some serious thought about moving up to heavyweight. This to challenge Mike Tyson. Yes, Hearns actually talked to the media about his desire to fight the former heavyweight king, who had recently been beaten in a momentous upset by James Buster Douglas. Hearns, who stands 6'2", and would have had both height and reach advantages over Iron Mike, had one stipulation: that Tyson came in no heavier than the 200-pound mark. No, I don't even think Tyson was, that was not going to happen. I'm walking around at 182 pounds right now, so I can get near enough to 200 pounds, Hearns said. If Tyson comes down to 200 and trains the way he did for Buster Douglas, I'd fight him in a minute. everybody wants a piece of him now. Yeah, he wasn't going to get that same mic, though. It would, of course, be great to be able to obtain actual footage of Hearns saying what he said to the Detroit Free Press back in this was 1991. I said 81, I meant 1991. To see if Tommy had a glint in his eye or a grin on his face when he said what he said, or else maybe Hearns, who we all know was utterly fearless in the ring, a warrior who always wanted the biggest and the best fights so as to secure his greatness, was indeed 100% serious. In any case, Emanuel Stewart, a man who guided Hearns to almost all of his key victories, aside from the 91 title win of an upset over Virgil Hill, managed to talk Hearns out of it. And as special as Hearns was, and as much as Tyson might not have been the force he once was in 1991, this is almost certainly a good thing that Emanuel Stewart talked the hitman out of that. Right? Like William said, he set Michael up by taking a lot of punishment. He got overconfident and got blanketed. Yeah. Yes, he did. He and Teddy Atlas told him, Mike, to box. Moore had to fight one, but he still wanted to go in there and slug it out with Foreman. I guess Moore might have wanted to stop the old guy. But that's where he made his mistake. He could have stood outside and boxed and won easily. But he didn't listen to his training. And like Mike said, he got blanketed. What's up, Thomas Hill, in the building? He was talking about one time Thomas Hearns was talking, when he had went up to light heavyweight, he was talking about going to heavyweight and fighting Mike Tyson. But Emanuel Stewart talked him out of it, which was probably a good thing. Right? Now, Hearns, if he had fought Tyson, he might have been able to stick around for a couple of rounds using his awesome jab and keeping Tyson away from him. But surely, Tyson was still lethal in 1991, and he would have tagged Hearns at some point and would have gotten him out of there. Yeah. And, there was a knock on turns of Hearns of a fragile chin, too, and yeah. Mike would have got up in there, overpowered him eventually. But, Hearns had that reach in that jab, and he could have got one of them right hands in on Mike. I don't know. They could have went Hearns' way. But the fact that Hearns even thought about going up to heavyweight to fight anyone, let alone one of the most vicious big men in the history of the sport, really does show how Hearns was an old school fighter, one of a kind, wanted all the smoke. How can you not love somebody like Thomas Hearns? He wanted all the smoke, the hitman, Thomas Hearns. Ernie Shavers was born the same date that Rocky Marciano died on. Not that day, but the same date. The same date. Because Ernie Shavers was a professional boxer when Rocky Marciano got killed in that plane crash. But his date of birth was the same date of the plane crash where Rocky died at. Yep, died at. Ernie Shavers was born on that same day. The same date of the Rocky Marciano fatal plane crash. Yes, he was. Wow. 351. Yeah, we'll get this one in another time. I just got some other stories for the end of shows and stuff, but yeah. I forget what the date was though, but yeah. The same date that Rocky Marciano died, that was Ernie Shavers' birthday. Yeah. But appreciate everybody for stopping by today. Hope you enjoyed talking about George Foreman's 4 signature fights. Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, and got to Michael Moorer. That was one of the biggest of his career. And the man had 76 fights, so he had a lot of other big fights, especially one with Ron Lyle in 76, fight of the year. 5-round fight was fight of the year, and I think the 4th round was round of the year. He had some other big fights, but yeah, those 4 were his signature ones. You say George Foreman and name a fight. Tell somebody, name a Foreman fight. Like I said, the younger people will probably say Michael Moorer, but older people will say Ali, Foreman. Ali, Norton, or Frazier. Most will say Ali because that was a big one, a big loss there. They thought he was going to kill Ali in there. I told you, Foreman and his team in the dressing room before the fight prayed that he did accidentally kill Ali in the ring. But Ali was only 32. So, I was kind of worried for Ali back then, too. But looking at it now, Ali was only 32 years old. So, that's still, But, looking at Ali missing all those years and everything, too. So, that had had to factor that into it, too. So, yeah. But that's not that old, 32. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, Ali was just so smart. That rope-a-dope. Like I told Angelo Dundee didn't even know about the rope-a-dope. Angelo said he found out about it when everybody else did during the fight. What is he doing? Get off the ropes. And they tried to say to Angelo, that's the reason I know he didn't know, because Foreman's team tried to say Angelo loosened the ropes up before the fight so Ali could lean back further into the ropes. But Angelo said, I didn't loosen the ropes. He said, I didn't even know about the rope-a-dope, right? And then during the fight, somebody from Foreman's corner tried to tighten him up. And Angelo went across there like a jet, cursing like, no, you can't mess with the ropes now. That was during the fight. Angelo went flying across the ring. They was trying to tighten the ropes up, but they saw what Ali was doing and it was being effective. He was leaning way, they tried to tighten him up so he couldn't lean back as far into the rope-a-dope, but Angelo was like, no. You can't mess with nothing on this ring now. The fight done started. Yeah. But yeah, people had been using that strategy for decades. Ali just gave the name the rope-a-dope. Nicolino Loesch, Archie Moore was doing that way back in the 40s. Leaning back into the ropes, taking punches, tarring their opponents out and stuff. Ali just gave it the name, the rope-a-dope. They wasn't called the rope-a-dope back then, but they were doing it. Nicolino Loesch was famous for that. And Nicolino Loesch was a good defensive fighter. He never took punches flush. He knew how to move his body and duck and stuff, take glancing blows from his opponents. Yeah, George Foreman had a 76, I think it was 76. Yeah, 76, and he had 81 fights. 76-5 with 68 knockouts. So that's 89.4% knockout ratio. Yeah, and he had a lot of big fights during his career. But those 4 were certainly the signature ones. His last fight was Shannon Briggs in 1997. Yeah. Wow. Laptop getting ready to die. Yeah, his last fight was Shannon Briggs in 1997, which he lost. Majority decision. One judge had it a draw. And then Evander Holyfield. Him and Holmes was scheduled to fight. I think they were both 40. They were exact same age. I think 1990. No, I think they were both 50. They were scheduled to fight each other, right? And they had already received 10% of their purses. Foreman was set to receive, I think like $4 million. He had got 400,000. I think Holmes was getting like $1 million. He had got 100,000. But then for some reason the fight was called. They had some kind of money problems, and the fight got called off. But yeah, Nobody wanted to see them two old fossils at 50 years old fighting each other, forming their homes. Why didn't they fight back in the late 70s when everybody wanted to see them fight? Wait till they 50, then try to fight. But it didn't happen. Didn't happen. But I appreciate everybody for coming through today. BN Boxing News in the building. I didn't know BN Boxing News was in here. Salute BN Boxing News. Yeah. It's Reliving George Foreman's signature fights. Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Muhammad Ali, and Michael Moore. Appreciate everybody. BN Boxing News, Thomas Hill. And this was the birthday show, too. Me and the 10th of Van McQueen's birthday. Well, I got to go in J Hardcore and get my 66 hits on that bag, too. Tomorrow. Yeah, Jay will be back tomorrow. He wasn't on today, yeah. You got to hit it like 100 something times. Me and Ed together. Almost 100. I don't know how old Ed is, but yeah. Yeah, I'm coming in there, J Hardcore's chat tomorrow to get my 66. So y'all tune in for that. J Hardcore got to hit the bag at least 66 times tomorrow. I will be in there. BN Boxing News, Thomas Hill, Just Do Boxing, Mike Mazick, Shawa, Mike Rim, 21YGL Green Light, Crush the Legend, and Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody. 1,000,000%. Just Do Boxing is coming up next. With some balanced, unbiased talk, giving everybody the just do over there. So tune in to Just Do Boxing next. But this is Cass Sports. Hope everyone enjoyed the show. Be back tomorrow. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all of that boxing history. Everybody have a great afternoon.